Welcome to the Spoiler Room, 8 weeks of Alfred Hitchcock. The next 8 episodes we will be covering some films that are known and not so known of Alfred Hitchcock's. We hope you enjoy the show and aren't too scared. If you do get scared, please pause the podcast, have a drink, come back and finish the podcast. Thank you and enjoy.
And welcome once again to another Hitchcock episode. Yes, 8 weeks of Hitchcock. We are over the halfway mark. And tonight we've got a very interesting one. It stars James Stewart. So guess which Alfred Hitchcock film it is. Go ahead. I'll give you 4 guesses. Yes, Jimmy Stewart once again back with Alfred Hitchcock. And they're doing the story called Vertigo. And I got a great crew for me with me tonight to talk about this interesting thriller. First off, the diva of the spoiler room is with us. She is here. Hello, Dawn. How are you?
I am fantastic. How about yourself?
Hanging in there, doing well. Looking forward. It's halfway through the week, so always a good sign. You're always headed towards the weekend. Always looking forward to that. So glad you could be here. And next to Dawn is David. He's back with us. Hello, David. How are you?
I'm doing okay. Yourself?
Well, we're doing all right. I'm looking forward to talking about this film. And guess who else is in the room tonight? That's right. You heard him when we talked about the man who knew too much. And now, well, he's here with us once again. Everybody, it's Scotty D.
Well, why are you doing that thing with your voice?
Well, I'm trying to be different. All right.
Well, you're different, all right, son. You're certifiable. You are.
Certifiable. Oh.
Yeah. I'm the one who sees rabbits, but I mean, this is just nuts. This is crazy talk. I don't know what I should have gone. I should have gone on, something else here. I should have. The Nerdist was trying to call me. I could have gone with no. Mark the Movieman. I don't know. Hi.
How do kids say it? They're cray cray. What is it? Now I'm going to hell because I just had Jimmy Stewart say cray cray. Anyway. So here we are, and yes, it is the story of Vertigo. And Dawn, do you want to give it a shot to tell the folks what Vertigo's about? I put you on the spot.
Vertigo is the story of John Ferguson, who, for reasons I can only assume are racist, is called Scotty because, Ferguson.
Yes.
What are you trying to say?
Yeah.
My real name's John. What are you talking about? Sorry, go ahead. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
So it is the story of Scotty, who is hired by a former coworker of his to watch his wife, who has been acting suspiciously, and Scotty becomes obsessed with the wife, and then adultery happens, then death happens. The end.
Nice. Well said. Obsession, adultery, death. There you go. Vertigo.
That's falling in love again, then death.
Oh yeah, falling in. Well, I don't.
There was no love.
There was no love.
It was obsession.
Okay.
God, this film. Holy crap. Not made today, that's for sure.
I think it could easily be made, but but I think it was ahead of its time.
Oh, I agree with you, Scott.
It surprised me in there quite a bit, but we'll get into it a bit because I had a couple questions. I'm looking forward to the crew's opinions on this. So let's talk about how the film opens, because Alfred Hitchcock does this great job of establishing as we've gone through these films, establishing your viewer into the situation fairly quickly and introducing your character, and you pretty much know a lot about him in a very little amount of time. And we have Jimmy Stewart running across the rooftops. And Scott, what was going on with that? Were they chasing someone?
Does it matter? It's another MacGuffin. It's like he was a cop, and he and another police officer were chasing a suspect across the rooftops. It was a very well shot action sequence for the time, and we don't really find anything about who they're chasing, why they're chasing them. Doesn't matter. The important thing is that they needed a reason to get them, Jimmy Stewart and this police officer, on the rooftop. And they did. They got him on the rooftop, and they're jumping from rooftop to rooftop, and like they would soon do on like every other 70s cop show, like 20 years later. But now, the cop, is, jumps and makes the jump no problem. Jimmy Stewart doesn't quite make the jump because, much as we love him, he's
Jimmy Stewart.
He's Jimmy Stewart. He's not Jackie Chan. And so he slips a bit, and Jimmy Stewart has this fear of heights, and a fear of heights, when it is pronounced there, can cause people to experience vertigo. Hey, they should call a movie that.
Yeah, they should.
And he gets this vertigo, and it causes him to, this awful sensation, and he's just about to black out. This cop is trying to save him, and when the cop tries to save him, Jimmy Stewart is or Scotty is I should use the character name. It's so rare that I have a decent character named me.
Scott, we keep doing that every episode.
Because he's so much his own person. But so Scotty, he's trying to. He can't help himself. And the cop's trying to help him, and the cop falls to his death, which causes additional feelings of guilt and helplessness in Scotty later on. So that's the importance of that sequence, is just to establish that Scotty was a police officer, a decorated police officer, but he has this fear of heights that not only proved detrimental to him on the job, it proved deadly for the people he was on the force with. And so he resigned in shame. That's the whole thing about there. And then we get a scene that does exposition on that for what seems like 20 minutes.
You're talking about the scene with Midge, right?
Yes.
Where they're exploring that whole thing.
Yeah, and I love Midge, I want to say, for the record. I'm sure she's going to come up, but I love Midge. I think she's like, that's the type of woman I would probably go for, honestly. But
Midge
was really cool. But I noticed this last time I was saying, like, wow, there are exposition scenes, especially in the first half of this movie, that really go on.
This one particularly, well, I think it's noticeable, and folks, we are going to probably jump around in this film. I know a lot of people have covered this, so we're not going to just break it in order, but that I think it's really noticeable with the exposition scenes, because you really have long periods of time, I noticed, where there's no dialogue or very little.
Yes.
So when you get those exposition scenes, I think they stand out even more in this film. So, here with his Vertigo, which I find funny because the film's called Vertigo, and David, Vertigo actually doesn't come up as much as you might think in a film called Vertigo, does it?
No, it does not. I mean, you would think that with Vertigo being the fear of heights, you'd think that, Jimmy Stewart would find a moment where he'd be standing on a skyscraper in the middle of New York going, ah, but you don't really find him doing too much of that, until he actually, steps on a stool or...
Yeah, the stool scene, and then you don't get any really instance of vertigo for quite some time. But yeah, it just surprised me a little bit that how little there was of vertigo. Though I'm sure I'm shallow as a puddle, because I'm sure there's more meaning to it than just
Yes.
him falling or having the physical condition of vertigo.
Or
And I
that's
think that's yeah, and I think that.
psychedelic moment that it was having evidently after the death of someone.
Oh, that great animation sequence, yeah. And Dawn, from your sound of it, I knew you were kind of wanting to jump in on it. So go ahead and tell us the vertigo. It's not just the physical condition we're talking
It's
about,
not
is it?
just the physical condition of vertigo. It is the metaphorical vertigo that is the psychological vortex that he spirals into with this obsession.
Wow, that was way too good for the show. That was awesome, Don. I love that. Wow.
That's why it is called vertigo.
That's deep right there. Scotty D, would you agree with that? Why it's called vertigo, not just for the physical condition?
I would. It's a great observation. I think we should expand on it, because that's what this film is. It's so much so that when De Palma did one of his quote unquote Hitchcock homages to this movie, the movie was the first time he did it was called Obsession, which is kind of a more on the nose title.
It's De Palma we're talking about.
But yeah, and that's why I said quote unquote, because there's still that debate. Are they homages? Are they just ripoffs? I won't say my opinion there because I do enjoy those films. But no, I think it deserves expanding upon. It's this whole thing is. God, I want to say that it is probably Hitchcock's most. I think it's his darkest film.
Oh yeah,
and
Definitely.
I think it is also probably one of his most psychologically complex films, where we joke. I mean, I remember the first time I saw this movie, which was long time after it became famous, because it was unavailable for the longest time. It wasn't really until the mid '90s when they restored it that it came back into circulation again. And when I saw it, joke as we do about Jimmy Stewart being the everyman, yeah, he is the everyman, and you get to see him turn into this like psychotically obsessed creep. And just you see you actually see everyman, somebody who could literally be us, slip into absolute madness from this. So, and it does feel like kind of feel like the ground is taken out from under him at several points, metaphorically speaking, and that he is kind of just like slipping further and further downward into this spiral here. So
yeah, it surprised me because I don't think I've, in all honesty, and again, why I love taking this journey of 8 weeks of Hitchcock is because, in all honesty, some of these I've only seen bits and pieces, and Vertigo is one of those where I've only seen bits and pieces, not sat down and actually watched from start to end. And you can kind of see why. I mean, it's kind of hubris that Jimmy Stewart is with Alfred Hitchcock all the time, but these roles that Jimmy is getting in Alfred Hitchcock films are different than what people picture him as, because of course everybody pictures him as old George Bailey, It's a Wonderful Life, or the Everyman, or that, that casual night, the nice guy, it's Jimmy Stewart, how can you say anything bad? And then you get Vertigo, where you watch him turn into this thing that you're just like, oh my God, this is dark.
And watching it this time, I wondered, I was trying to watch for the kind of the moment when he turned into the bad guy, not the bad guy, but certainly
the crazy guy,
not the nice guy.
Yeah.
And whenever that happened, started before the movie started.
Yeah.
Because he was not even when he was in that initial dragging exposition scene with Midge, he was very self-absorbed, and yeah, he was taking responsibility for his actions, or seeming to. He was very much playing, oh, poor me, I'm the victim here.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And that's the one good thing about that long exposition scene, though, where he's talking to Midge is just not having. She's just
Yeah, exactly.
The temptation is to say throughout the film is like, oh, doesn't he see what he has? He should end up with Midge, but for Midge's sake, do we really want him to?
Oh God, no.
You know, and it's the thing. Like, but then again, you're like, but I kind of like Midge, and I think she deserves better. You know.
Yeah, that's a good observation. Yeah, he's already kind of in an odd place to where it almost seems more natural once you pay attention. Where he goes, it actually seems natural for where we catch, where we.
Go ahead. No, go ahead. Go ahead.
I was just going to say where we're at in his life, in Ferguson's life, it actually makes a lot of sense. But because it's Jimmy Stewart, people picture it. Oh my God! I mean, we do it here through all these episodes where he's in. We keep referring to him by Jimmy Stewart, and
not Jimmy Stewart. You know, you just like, if you, and I don't want to compare their acting ability at all, but there are some people who are more known to be iconic. In when we were growing up, Schwarzenegger. Did we care who his character was called in Commando? No. Or before that, John Wayne. John Wayne was very much the thing. Marilyn Monroe was very much, even though Marilyn Monroe was a talented actress and was getting better and better before her untimely demise there. She, she was, an icon first, and almost considered an icon first and a thespian second. And Jimmy Stewart's the same way. I really do like Dawn's point also, like the 2 points that she made, the one about the title, and then also that the obsessiveness and the madness and the self-absorption all happened before the film began.
Mm-hmm.
I really like, and I think that's really good to know, because we are trying to catch that. We're trying to catch, like, okay, what's the moment where we could have said, because I noticed that this time it was like, if it was one of those if only movies. Oh, if only he didn't get this assignment. If only they didn't meet up. If only he didn't insist on this. If only she didn't insist on this. But really, it goes back further, because you're like, well, if only he wasn't, because ready to become this person. In order for this plot in this movie to work, and it's really you have to suspend disbelief more than almost any other Hitchcock film I'd seen since at least 39 Steps. Is that there's a lot depending on it. He has to get the assignment, and it all stems that he has to become obsessed with this person.
Right.
If he doesn't become obsessed with this, if he doesn't accept the job and he doesn't become obsessed with this person, it doesn't work.
Mm-hmm.
How did they know he would become obsessed? Well, one thing you could just say is that that's just writing, and you're supposed to suspend the disbelief of that. Another is to say that maybe they knew how self-absorbed he was. They knew how obsessive he became. Why did that? Why did his and Midge's engagement break up? Why did she break it off?
Mm-hmm.
Probably because she saw some of that.
Yeah, that's a good point. What about you, David? Do you think our man Ferguson was kind of on a spiral, or in a place already that was darker? And I think it may, do you think maybe it was tough for the audience maybe to accept because it's, Jimmy Stewart?
I think so, because we kind of started like in the middle of kind of in the middle of his story, in a sense, because you get that scene in the very beginning where he's obviously having that recurring dream of when he went and chased someone down and got that fear of heights and whatnot. And then, of course, you start to know Midge a little bit, and you get a sense that they have been together, and because of his conversation and whatnot, and they all obviously. I think you guys hit it on the nose there. I mean, how is it that they could have been engaged before, and nothing had been wrong with John Ferguson's character to begin with? I mean, there had to have been something wrong for them to break it off.
Well, so soon too, because she mentions they were only engaged for like 3 weeks or something like that before she broke it off.
Yeah.
And he was actually surprised she broke it off. Well, you're the one that broke it off, He's like,
well, and then later, doesn't it seem like Midge gets a little obsessive about him too?
A little. Yes, she does. I mean, she shows up later where, because as events progress, and as I said, folks, we jump around as events progress. Eventually, Ferguson and the woman that he's supposed to follow end up crossing paths as he rescues her from San Francisco Bay, which she dove into. And as she is leaving his apartment, Midge is showing up there and sees it and tries to draw her own conclusion from things. And gets the right idea of what could be going on. And she's following him, and then, she's because then you have the event that happens, which is the death of this woman he just fell in love with. And I know we're jumping around, but he's there in that, being taken care of and counseling, and Midge is there like every day, she does care for him, but now that you mentioned, I'm wondering if she is got her own little bit of quote unquote vertigo going on with that. Dawn, what'd you think of Midge? Do you think that maybe she becomes kind of obsessed as well? Not maybe to the level of Ferguson, but
absolutely. I mean, there's definitely, you can tell even at the beginning when they're talking about their abridged engagement that there is some regret going on, but she was still, even though she broke off the engagement, it was very clear, because Hitchcock is very good with directing body language. It was very clear that she was still expecting them to get back together after he, for lack of a better turn of phrase, grew up.
Yeah.
And which led into the her being more interested in what was going on, and following, showing up at his house and seeing that. And then finally, when he was in convalescence at the hospital, don't get me even started on how they portrayed that psychiatric hospital, but because that was absolutely not what psychiatric hospitals were like at that point. But even her response to him then, I think that was her finally letting go.
Yeah, that's, well, when she because she realized he was still in love with the woman, even though she was dead. He was still carrying this torch for Madeline Elster. And I wanted to look, I forgot the name, so I want to look up before I keep saying the woman. Madeline Elster, who is the wife of his friend who he was supposed to follow. He fell in love with her, and
I thought you were just being secretive.
No. Not yet. No. The woman. Well, we'll get to it in a little bit of why. Yeah,
that's cute.
I wasn't trying to. Damn this modern age. Jeez. Yes, fine. Okay, go ahead, Brammy. Whatever. I'm Ferguson from the 50s. There you go. This film is definitely nestled in the 50s. Let's put it that way. Because we have Madeline Elster, who is the woman that Ferguson is following. He's the one that eventually he saves from the bay. He's the one that her husband is saying she's crazy because she zones out and she goes to this painting that she visits of this woman that looks like her, and then to this location, which is historical significance to her grandmother, and you find out she has a dark past. This film is all kinds of dark. Here, her family has a history of her grandma committing suicide after going crazy, and here she could be going crazy.
Carlotta Madre.
Yeah.
Was the name on the gravestone, at least.
Yes, Carlotta. Yep. Who was like her grandmother, and there's this just really unusual story they build up in this history with Madeline. But what I love about this really is the fact that as much as and as interesting as it is on the whole, Scott, how much does that actually play to the movie?
Meaning?
Well, because we build up all of this history and stuff with her and the Carlotta and the backstory, with the Madeline character.
Mm-hmm.
But if you get down to brass tacks, all of that, how much of that is actually significant to the core of what happens, which is Madeline falling to her death.
It is the most. It is like, if like a bunch of psychologists had to get together and create a Rube Goldberg device on how to kill somebody without using any actual tools. Because, as I said, it all depends on him having to fall in love with this person. Well, what else do we have to do? They also have this weird story. I mean, it can't be like, hey, I think my wife might be suicidal. Could you keep an eye on her? No, she's obsessed with this dead woman, and I think she's possessed by her spirit, and I think she's, and all of this, we're drawn into this as well. And that's the idea, really, is to draw us into this as well. And, so we get kind of drawn into this weird thing, but it's like all this crazy stuff. And really the important thing is just to draw Scotty into it and draw and make him obsessed. And that's the whole point of it. It can't be just like anything else. It has to be very specific, and it's a lot. It's a lot to heave onto an audience, but Hitchcock is so good at playing the audience that this is like my 5th or 6th time seeing the movie, and it was finally this time I said, Hitch, this is a bunch of bullshit, isn't it? I'm like, do you know how much this has to depend on, this weird, this is a weird plot, to spit on somebody, but they do it. I mean, how integral is it to it? Well, it is and it isn't. A lot of it is smoke and mirrors, because, Scotty gets obsessed by following her obsession, which it turns out is not an obsession. It's an act, and then develops yet another obsession, afterwards, and they were not planning on, and all that stuff. So, I mean, it's a lot of stuff like that. So it draws you in, which of course creates different layers and everything like that. But at the same time, how much of this weird plot is important in the plot where this guy just needs to basically get them on a tower so he can push his wife off? Probably not a hell of a lot, but it's important that Scotty gets drawn in, and because he is the everyman, it is important that we get drawn in, and that's the reason it's all there, and that's the reason he's doing it. And Hitchcock is messing with us. He's always been messing with us. That's like his whole thing.
He loves messing with the audience. David, is there telltale signs early that old Ferguson's being played with, or do you think they cover it well by making this story with Madeline so involved and multi-layered for old Jimmy Stewart, Ferguson to dive into?
I think they cover it really well, because Alfred Hitchcock, like we have already said, does like to fuck with us. He likes to fuck with our minds. So it's more or less, you got a backstory that you're following along, and to me, it's kind of like the Velociraptor, where you come across the one raptor that's staring you in the face, and the other one you didn't even know was there. You know,
that's a good analogy. Yeah. Don, how about you? Do you feel that they covered this well by giving this such a deep story to cover the fact that they're just playing Ferguson?
Yes, I really like David's analogy. And I also agree strongly with Scott. Integral to the plot, not really, but integral to drawing the Ferguson character in and having the Ferguson character drag the audience in, making it believable, making it plausible. He loves to play that "is it a supernatural ghost" card, doesn't he? He really likes to play that, because there were a lot of scenes setting up Ferguson as Madeline was setting up Ferguson, and as Ferguson was following Madeline, where he'd be following her, and then she'd appear to completely disappear.
Mm-hmm.
When he followed her to the old hotel, when she was at the museum, she just up and left, and it seemed like she just mysteriously vanished, because the husband said she would just disappear.
Right.
Where would it be? He set it up to be the haunting of the grandmother of Carlotta, but suddenly, when they went to the redwood forest, she stopped disappearing, and he could find her. And it's at that point, when she knew she had him hooked, that she stopped just disappearing.
Right. Yeah, because she draws him in hook, line, and sinker.
Oh yeah.
Which, again, this is unusual character for us to see old Jimmy in, but this is a guy who's self-absorbed, and I like the fact that by just making him a detective too is a great way for you to immediately understand his motivation for digging into this.
Uh-huh.
At the start, and then him becoming obsessed in that, you realize that's his personality.
Was that gradual, or was that actually more of a quick, descent into, the obsession, the obsession itself? Was it already there? Do we think
it's there when he first sees her?
Okay.
You could tell. I mean, there's that one of my favorite epic, and it's just a little side note, epic rap battles of history. They have the rap battle starts off as Steven Spielberg and Alfred Hitchcock, and Spielberg says that Alfred is famous of Jimmy Stewart making one of two faces. Well, he's got a lot more faces, and he makes that face, his character, just the minute he sees her, he's hooked. It goes beyond the he's already into it. He's like, okay, yep, I'm going to follow her. The minute he sees her at at Ernie's or Eddie's?
Ernie's.
It
is which was a real place in San Francisco. It was a iconic steakhouse.
Cool. Now I want steak. Thanks, Scotty.
Yeah, well, sorry, we only have booze.
Sounds like Wisconsin. But I think, David, you make a good point of when his obsession starts. I think it's immediately when he sees her. Don, what do you think? Do you think that pretty much is the trigger right there? I mean, it is gradually gets deeper into the obsession, but I mean, it's like boom, based on basically her looks.
Yeah, I saw her too. She was designed to be that.
Yes.
Every aspect of her, from her Xingyang. I always, overpronounce that.
Yes.
But from her coif all the way down to her pumps, she was designed to be the object of obsession.
Yeah. And whether or not they did that for the movie, but I think it more so was Gavin Ellister setting up old John by doing that, because these guys, I don't know if they're old work buddy or they're war buddies, aren't they?
It was like I thought they were at college together.
They were war buddies.
They were
war buddies.
They were college and war buddies, I think, because that's where his Scotty nickname came from.
Yeah. He said that he was an old friend from the war.
Right. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Who had called him up because he hadn't heard from him in like God knows how long or whatever. The heck he said. At least that was what I heard.
Yeah, that was during.
This is a revenge flick as well.
A revenge? I'm not sure. I never got the impression of revenge. I got the impression that it's just a mark, that Ellister knew Ferguson enough that he was a mark.
Yeah, but he took her up to that tower and made her go through that, and obviously we knew that something was going to happen. I mean, that I didn't expect her to fall, in the very end when I first saw this for the first time. But could we, in fact, say that this was, in fact, his revenge on her for making him love her?
Oh, you're talking about jumping near the end when he finds out that it was all a ruse and Madeline Elster is actually Judy Barton. Dun, dun, dun. That was my question. That was going to be my question to the group for that. And I'm glad you brought it up, David, is with her, because folks, this film, like I said, it's really dense. But basically what ends up happening is Madeline supposedly died. Jimmy Stewart goes into convalescence because he just, after has a break, basically a psychological break with a really wild animation sequence, which I wish I could dream like that. He suddenly runs across this woman who looks like Madeline, and she's Judy. And we find out Judy is Madeline, and she was used as a decoy, basically as an excuse for his old buddy, in quotes, Ellister, to kill his real wife and throw her off a tower. So Jimmy becomes kind of, this is where this film just gets creepy. I mean, it's not, if it doesn't get creepy before, Jimmy Stewart, he everything gets confessed to him, and he's like, Ferguson, and he's like, well, why don't you have dinner with me? Dude, from this part on to the rest of the film, this film just goes to another level of creep, doesn't it?
Oh yeah, and that's just the part that got me was because he it's kind of funny because he did Psycho the audience just before Psycho, is that it appeared that he killed the lead halfway through the movie.
Yeah, that's right. That's the way I felt.
And you're like, oh my gosh, wasn't expecting that. And then she meets this other person and everything, and he doesn't know quite right away. He thinks that, as far as he's concerned, he's seeing her everywhere anyway. But this person really reminds him of the person that he lost when he comes across her again. So we just think that she's like some struggling person from Kansas. And then, when he leaves, we hear it kind of in a letter that she almost writes to him and then tears up, that, no, this was all part of a plot. But Scotty is still in the dark on this.
Mm-hmm.
And so he's still in the dark on this as he tries to mold this person into this dead woman, this quote unquote dead woman, do your hair like her, and like just like totally like gaslighting her and trying to put her, doesn't really consider her feelings. Well, change your hair, it can't matter to you.
Yeah.
It's like that's the line that always gets me like, oh Jesus, you fucking creep. But he's and he gets obsessed, and it gets dark as he just goes further and further and further into this. And this is the part where you really see him lose his tether. And if he was coming off as a sympathetic character before, you lose a lot of sympathy for him in this movie as you see him go more and more mad.
So would you say, because that was my question to you guys, is when do you think he suspected? Is it not until the necklace? Because it's Alfred, the way he directs this, I think
it all come crashing down with the necklace. I don't think he suspected, though, because I think that even though he was a detective, he should have seen it.
Mm-hmm.
He should have want to.
He didn't exactly. He didn't want to, and also he didn't have the mental faculties to see that. Not only did he not want to, but his brain, I don't think he was any good as a detective anymore. I think he could barely function in society at that point. I think that at the inquest for the wife's death, they did all but accuse him of murdering the woman himself. I mean, they really
did freaking trial.
They really let him have it, and so I think that this. I think that it all. Then all of a sudden, he had what's called a moment of clarity when he saw the necklace, and then I think it all came crashing down. And I think then his psychology of molding her into this person. I don't think it was a revenge at first. I think it is. Then, though, because I think that he gets downright sadistic at that point.
Yeah, he gets like Scary Stewart. It's like, holy shit. David, what about you? I mean, you brought it up. You mentioned it as revenge flick. Do you think that that's the breaking point where that's the first time Ferguson realizes that he really was played, was when he sees the necklace? Or did you feel maybe that he was suspecting her sooner and he was putting her through these paces of looking like her on purpose for revenge?
Well, I think that at that moment when he realized that necklace was from that portrait, he was definitely almost gone into that obsession stage, and I think that kind of snapped him out of his reverie that he was in, that level of reverence where he was like, okay, now you got the shoes, you've got the socks, okay, let's get you the hair now. It's once he got snapped out of that, that's when I think the you could almost hear the clockwork in his brain clicking, like right, because right after that is where you see him in the car.
Yeah,
I love that drive where she's like, "Where are we going?" And he's like, "I've just got one more thing to take care of."
Yeah,
one last thing to do.
So. Yeah, anyone who doesn't think Jimmy doesn't have range needs to watch this film, because he gets Norman Bates level.
And there's one thing I wanted to say. That judge was really judgmental.
It isn't his title, but
he was downright insulting to Jimmy there for a moment. His character, where he's like, well, evidently he just ran away from the damn thing and let her fall. So it was.
That judge, that was so weird. I'm like,
It was hilarious. I was just like, Jesus.
wow,
That
basically
judge,
going.
that judge is not as quiet as most judges are. He's kind of, he just says what he feels like, doesn't he?
Yeah.
Well,
He was very passive, and he was so passive aggressive about it. He wasn't like a Judge Judy or anything like that. He was just like, he was just put in the care of Detective Ferguson, which was a mistake, and and even though he had already caused the death of a fellow officer, nevertheless, they chose to do this, and perhaps if he had actually reacted, then the woman would be alive. Like, oh my god!
Yeah, that judge was.
It's almost, for a while, I actually thought for a second that maybe that wasn't the real inquest. We're just hearing what Scotty is hearing is from his point of view. But then again, I'm like, okay, you know what? Hitchcock is amazing, but let's just say that no, there's also a chance that the judge is just a dick.
I think given Hitchcock's history with the other 5 films or so that we've watched and his opinion of the law enforcement system, I think the judge was just a dick.
He may have been, but he wasn't wrong.
He wasn't wrong. That's what's really weird. And
the tone is very much still in that scene. It's very much still, oh, poor Scotty. He's such a victim. Yes, his negligence caused a woman to die, but poor Scotty, because he's still the victim here. Yeah. And that tone carries on, and it's creepy.
Mm-hmm. We're still kind of supposed to think that at the end
that he's a victim.
That he's the victim. I mean, the camera pulls away, and it's on his tortured face that we're pulling away from.
I have been. It's been in my mind, and I am hoping somebody else sees this, but I cannot help drawing parallels between John Ferguson and Humbert Humbert.
Interesting.
Especially the way they're written, because Nabokov, in his writing, even though Humbert Humbert was his primary character, the writing exhibited the contempt he felt for that character. And I think that the writing in this film exhibits the contempt that Hitchcock felt for John Ferguson.
That's cool. Because Humbert Humbert is a pathetic character. And there is, and you think about, people not wanting to take their quote unquote protagonists and show them as flawed. He's nothing but flaws in this movie. He's not even a very good detective.
No,
he's and so he's nothing but flaws. So yeah, he's weak. He grows weaker, and yet he uses what he has in place of strength to exert influence.
You're right about this flawed character that I honestly, thinking back to it, the film ends. I couldn't find a redeeming quality in John Scotty Ferguson at all.
No, he was even before Madeline died, just before she ran up to the bell tower and died. He was her possessor. Then, after he was released from the hospital, he was her stalker, her captor, her abuser.
God.
Right up until the end.
That whole sequence where we get Midge, she leaves because she leaves Ferguson at the convalescence because she knows she'll never be able to win his heart. And they say, well, he's going to have about 6 months to a year. So the next time we see him, he's up and about. From when he finally comes across Judy Barton to the very end. For a film in the 50s, this thing, is so twisted. He is watching his character transform Judy Barton. And what's worse is Judy reluctantly going along with it because she feels so guilty for do you think she was feeling guilty, or
that's actually gonna be my question.
No, go ahead. Go ahead, Scotty.
Well, you know how we say that there's no love there with Scotty and Judy. Thank you. I keep forgetting her name. That's just because I'm lazy and I didn't look it up. But I don't think there's any real love that she has for him either. I think she feels sorry for him. I think that she does probably feel guilty, but also, do you think there's something else? Why do you think? What do you think? There's something else about how she went along with this plot and everything like this. Now, and I don't want to just place blame on her, because she's definitely is a victim in this. She's the primary victim in this movie. Well, okay, the wife is primarily the victim in this movie, but but she runs a close second. She's the victim with screen time. I thought, like, okay, there's a few things you could go with that, because I just did not get. I got where she was devoted to this person, but he asked her to dinner. She did not have to say yes.
No.
She didn't.
She did not have, she did. And I'm not trying to place too much blame on her, because she is such a victim in this movie. But also, I got something from this the last time I saw it. And, there might be a lot of things I love about the possession and everything. I get that she's someone who has had a lot of abuse in the past. I get that doesn't she say something about why she left Kansas and stuff about?
Well, she even drops a line when Jimmy shows up at her door. She's not exactly like shocked, but she says, "Oh, I've heard that many times before. Oh yeah, I've been through that as well."
She's also says, "I've been picked up before too." That can mean a couple things. That can mean that she's been, around the block, as they would say back during that time. That she's been promiscuous. It could also mean that that she actually has been arrested. Or it was often that was actually a term that was used where if you've been arrested for solicitation, that could be that. But so I'm thinking that there might be a lot of abuse in her past, a lot of stuff like this. But I think also she doesn't seem like, even though she seems like somebody who was a hard person, and you still get a little bit of that hardness when you see her in that persona, in her more natural persona in that scene. But this was a moment in which it brings her back to a time when someone was really, truly fascinated by this image of her. It brings her back to a time when she could also wear nice clothes, go to art galleries, that she would be perhaps someone that someone would seek after. And that she thought she was going to have a comfortable life after this. She didn't think. She knew that Scotty was just a tool that they were using, but she thought that she was going to have a more comfortable life after this. But then she got ditched, as Scotty puts it, because she gets used. That's her tragedy. Everybody uses her. Scotty uses her. But I always wondered, like, I don't think there was any love. I never felt any love. I thought that perhaps it was from my point of view, I felt that it was hers was a combination of falling back on these patterns of abuse that she's experienced in her life, and also trying to relive a moment where she was both comfortable and desired.
Dawn?
I agree. It's the pattern with abuse victims that they will absolutely settle and seek out a lesser abuse if it makes them feel normal. And I think his form of abuse, because it was it was hand in hand with a near worship made her feel that it was worth it.
Mm-hmm. Her giving up a part of herself, playing that role playing out, was worth it because of the way it made her feel.
Yes, because even though, I mean, she wanted to believe that he loved her just like he wanted to believe that she was the woman he wanted. It took a lot of belief and self-delusion on both parts, and he was very charming and suave in his really, really, what does it matter to you if your hair is blonde instead of its natural brown? Really, really, I know you don't like these clothes, and I know you know that I want you in these clothes because they're her clothes, but what does it matter to you what you wear? It's not like it's your personality or anything. It's not like it's your identity or anything. I just wonder if she hadn't made the slip and put on the necklace, how long it would have taken for him to start calling her by the name Madeline.
Oh, probably not long. And I think not just, I think you guys are right, the way it made her feel, but even before the death of the actual Madeline, the frame job of the death of Madeline, even before that, she enjoyed playing Madeline a little, I think.
Because he was her knight in shining armor rescuing her.
Right. She was getting in these situations where she knew he would stop following her and actually reveal himself to save her. In fact, her jumping into the bay was the whole point, was so he would come to rescue her because she knew he would. But you look at the way she plays it too. She's supposed to be, and I know, please don't, I hope anyone doesn't take this the wrong way. It is still the 50s. The way her character is behaving, though she is married, the way she is interacting with Ferguson is not the normal kind of way you would kind of expect, even if she did like him, because especially that first time, when you find out that he does the ultimate creeper thing and strips her down naked because to dry her clothes.
Oh my God, that made me feel so dirty.
Oh my God, didn't it? It's like, okay.
And she's like, will that make you love me?
Well, that before that, this is what, after she first fell into San Francisco Bay Area, he rescues her, and she's laying in bed, and her clothes are on dryer. And normally, in scenes like this, the woman has like her underwear on or undergarments or something on, but she doesn't in this, which means I stripped her naked, which it just made you feel like, because at that point his character's obsessed with her anyway, and now he undressed her while she was unconscious, and it's just like the rest of this film. Damn it! It just is so creepy.
It's and you don't, because of censorship, you don't see the inevitable.
Yeah.
You don't think, okay, it looks exactly like it. Also, we don't know if they're having sex or not. I honestly don't know if he can.
I don't think they are.
I don't think he can, personally, and I don't think but doesn't she kind of kiss the same? That's what I was wondering. Like, wouldn't you notice that? Like, I mean, there's some people where, I mean, if you've had, more than, one, significant other in your life, that there's different ways people kiss and everything like that. What I was going to say about sexuality was, when that moment finally came, people's bodies are different. They feel different. You'll notice like a certain mole that someone has somewhere. What if she has the same mole?
Yeah.
I was kind of wondering about that. There's a lot I mean, this facade is so paper thin. Even with all this dressing on it, it's so paper thin it could all unravel in a moment. And I think if it wasn't the necklace, it would have been something else. Honestly,
it might have, but you make up a good point. I think it proved just how blind his obsession was, though.
Mm-hmm.
And in that point, you're absolutely right. I mean, he should, if they did go that far, you would think he would notice more similarities with her, even though she says she wasn't the woman at all. But he's so obsessed with the idea of Madeline that even if he did see it, even if part of his little detective brain that gets buried, or may have never even been there, but the little part of him that's a detective noticed something, I think the rest of him just pushes it away because he's so obsessed with Madeline and he wants her to be Madeline so badly that, oh, yeah, she does have a similar mole to what Madeline had, but that makes it even better. You know what I mean? I think that's part of the blind obsession. You're right. It is paper thin. And the audience is probably sitting there going, dude. Back then, they were saying, sir.
I say governor.
I think that they were a little bit more accepting back then.
Mm-hmm.
Because even though this is probably some cinematic experience that nobody was prepared for, but in that mindset, people were a lot more accepting.
Audiences at that time certainly did not look as deeply as we look these days.
Correct.
So they would accept things at face value.
Yeah, you're like, okay, no, he just, he just likes her, and he just wants her to be like Madeline, but they don't look any deep surface, just like they probably didn't have conversations like we're having tonight, where we're sitting down and going, well, Judy Barton probably had some major abuse in her.
Yeah, definitely not.
Well, I mean, that also, a lot of the things we're talking about, Hitchcock was always, who we've discussed on earlier shows, has his own issues, with misogyny and everything. He also, though, was always studying psychology and everything else, which was still, I mean, there were lots of people who still didn't believe in that at the time. I mean, there's and talk about, I mean, and we have to talk about, that the autonomy and agency of women is something that was not, as we've also discussed, not considered in the 50s a lot of times. So thoughts about, past abuse? What's abuse? We don't understand. This is an age where virtually everybody beat their kids.
Yeah.
This is an age, or wives. It was it was a time when any kind of abuse, that's something you didn't talk about, and if you couldn't get over that, well, that was a problem with you. I mean, it was messed up. That's amazing. We throw a lot of stuff on our folks, but when you see how they're raised, you're like, God, it's amazing anybody got out. And I think that so all these things we're discussing right now, which probably are present in these people, are still things that were never, ever, ever, ever discussed or talked about because, well, it just wasn't proper.
Well, and that falls a little bit back to the, somewhat sympathy, but we talk about that odd hearing, like, is being held in a makeshift court. Like, I was like, that was quick. Where Ferguson's on trial because of the death, and the judge is just berating him. And the feeling I got from that scene was, well, he wasn't a man enough.
Yeah.
He couldn't go up and save her. He's a coward. You're not even be worth to call a man.
Yeah.
That was the impression I got.
Yeah, he emasculated him. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think people sometimes, don't get me wrong, I there is lots of the abuse of spouses and abuse of kids that happen behind closed doors that no one talked about ever. But at the same time, there was I won't say pressure, but this specific cultural idea of what the man was supposed to be, because most of these guys had served through the war.
Mhm.
So you should be a hero. You should be a man. He should have, so there is that going on at that time too, to where some of these guys did what they did because that is what people expected them to do, whether or not they wanted to do it.
Uh-huh.
I hope that makes sense. But you get that feeling a little bit with with Ferguson character, in all honesty, is, in fact, he gets called out by Alistair. That's kind of the pushing of him to be a detective is, well, we're going to have dinner and say, well, I can only be on the ground floor. Well, don't worry. Ernie's is on the ground floor, I mean, but he plays to him like, don't be a coward, basically.
Yeah.
You can be a detective, be a man, and do this for me.
Which is funny because it's that same weakness that he intends to exploit.
Right.
Another thing that occurred to me, and here's my question. How do you feel about the fact that through this whole situation, when he is going to be teaching Judy a lesson and taking care of her for her part in the situation, it never seems to occur to him that it was his best friend, war buddy, college buddy that is actually the person that set him up?
Yeah. Yeah, he takes it out on her.
Mm-hmm.
When it was Elster that triggered this whole situation.
Well, he's not. Well, Elster's not there.
Yeah.
Also, there's so it's who's ever I think in basically within reach, and also because even though Elster is the one that made him really did manipulate him to feel this way, he's going to put the blame on the person that he felt that he fell in love with, which we've already established he just got fixated on. He's going to put the blame on the person who he's going to blame for this so-called weakness and everything. And it's going to be this woman who's been, kicked around by both sides, and that's so I think that's why he doesn't go after Elster. I mean, we never find out for sure. Well, you do kind of if you watch the foreign ending to this movie, which Hitchcock didn't like. But otherwise, you don't find out about what happened to this person, even this Elster person. You don't.
He kind of drops off the map.
You find out. If you watch this, some of the foreign territories made him tack on this little epilogue where they're listening to the radio and it sounds like they're on the manhunt for him and everything like that. And
did they really?
Yeah, and it was a scene where he goes back to Midge's apartment and there's no talking, but Midge is listening to the radio and he just walks in, and I think it's meant to establish that that they're gonna catch the bad guy and he'll probably end up going back to Midge, but Hitchcock hated it so much he was obligated to put it in, and he removed it from as many prints as possible. Yeah, and
I don't blame him. That totally changes the dynamic of the character in the movie.
Yeah, absolutely. It was absolute trash, and nobody liked it. I mean, there's not even any dialogue in the scene really, because nobody wanted to do the scene, and but otherwise you don't hear from this person. It's just her. So
yeah. What about you, David, and old Ferguson taking it out on Judy Barton when actually it was Elster who did this to him? Why is he not going after him?
Because she's the one who made him feel the emotions behind all of this. I mean, it takes a lot to be able to admit love from someone. Although some people are just that darn easy and wear their hearts on their sleeves. God damn it! But I know guys who fall in love with girls in hours. So it's pointless to just say, hey, don't fall in love or anything like that. But this was definitely bigger than a crush. It was more obsession than he probably expected himself.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe he already had that obsessed gene inside of him. Who knows? But I think that he went after her because she's the one who admitted the most emotions. And if he had had a chance to do so, he would probably have done something to the friend as well.
Right, but I get what you're saying, because in his line of thinking, she's to blame for, in a way, of making him become so obsessed with her and then betraying him. How dare you? Never mind the fact that she's been a pawn of both these guys, but in his twisted mind, he takes her up to the tower at the very end to teach her a lesson, when she's really been the pawn. But like you said, yeah, in his mind, he's blaming her a bit for the way he feels and the betrayal. How dare you make me love you, and the betrayal, at least the way I feel with that. And I'm going to show you a lesson. And he takes her to the tower, and then she gets spooked by the nun, which I will tell you right now, the nun creeping around in the bell tower, when she appears, that was scarier than the entire movie of the modern horror film called The Nun. That was creepier than that entire movie. Okay. Just a side note. But back to the, and then she falls out, and he's like, he becomes that. It took her dying to suddenly him realizing just how much of a dick move what he's done altogether. And he's standing on the ledge, and he realizes, oh great, I lost another one.
Not just that. The way he's standing there looking down implies that experience cured him of his vertigo.
Yeah, because he looks down without falling. You're absolutely right. This movie's 2 hours long, so you might actually forget that angle.
People fall twice in order for it to happen.
Yeah, it took two people twice to an extra traumatic event. But yeah, you're right.
Well, he didn't. Well, remember, he didn't make it to the top of the tower the first time.
Right.
This time he says, "I made it."
Yep.
Do you think? I mean, I don't really think that he was intending to throw her off the tower. But how far do you think his abuses would have gone before he said, "Oh, I forgive you. I'm just kidding. Here, let's go home."
I don't think he was in that forgiving mode. Yes.
I don't think he could have ever. I don't think that was in the cards to forgive him.
Do you think that if she hadn't accidentally fallen, he would have actually killed her?
Probably.
Yes.
Interesting.
And I'm not trying to be contradictory. I don't think so.
I don't think so either.
I
don't think he was. I think he was too weak. He wouldn't see himself as a victim if he killed her.
He wanted to teach her a lesson. He wanted to punish her because of his obsession with her and the control he was getting over her.
Did he want to kill her?
But what was it? Yeah, what was his end game though?
Yes.
I think it was to completely finally break her. I don't think he was planning on actually throwing her off. I think he wanted up there to break her completely, maybe hoping that she actually, finally becomes Madeline. But the way he was with her, even as he moved up with the stairs, as abusive as he was, and the surprise when she falls out, how he feels in that, I don't think he actually was intending to kill her. Maybe taking it to the very edge. I don't think I think his end game would be her complete breakdown, emotion, physically, and just completely surrender to him, completely admit she was, 100% wrong. And, I don't think he took her up there to kill her, just to teach her a lesson, to discipline her.
Well, let's not also forget, though, it not only does, by finding out about this, not only does he discover that all of this has been a ruse and a plot, he also it also destroys his vision of her.
Right.
He was going to take some country bumpkin from Kansas, and he was going to recreate the image of this dead woman. And he got her to talk like her, dress like her, act like her. And now he can't turn away that he can't do that because she never existed in the first place. So I don't know. I just don't. I don't want to think he would do it, but I can't imagine that he was thinking he was obviously not thinking in his right mind.
No.
And I think that, we've seen a lot of emasculated, weak people that turned out to be killers. It's actually usually the primary characteristic of an abuser.
Mm-hmm.
Fair enough.
So I still think that as soon as she got into that car, she was done for. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. What about you, David? Since you're for death, not just kidding, putting it down for him becoming the murderer. Why do you think that he would actually toss her out the bell tower?
Because I think that it doesn't take that much to push someone over the edge.
Mm-hmm.
It really doesn't. Obviously, if you're going to be a killer, there's a weakness in you, somewhere. But that doesn't mean that you're not a strong person. He obviously, when he drove her in the car, he had a goal in mind. He had a goal to take her back to the place in which he thought that he was in love with his significant other, and these are the moments before he saw her die, the one that he became obsessed over, or at least in his mind, he thought it was love. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So when he takes her to that precipice and walks her through it, he's watching her go through this the same process that she did, except he's just goading her with his own strength up those stairs, up to that tower, over to the edge. Do I think that that if she hadn't have fallen, would he have backed her up towards her and pushed her? I think he was that much close to being able to do that because he had already snapped.
Mm-hmm.
His mind was unbalanced. Could he have stopped himself from killing her if she had not fallen? Maybe. Maybe not. It's a big maybe. So.
What about you, Don? You're in the same camp I am as he wouldn't kill her.
I think that Scott and David make a good argument. I still don't think he would intentionally push her off. Mm-hmm. However, I am willing to believe that he would cause a situation that I do not believe he would intentionally, in the front of his mind, kill her, because that would definitely be proof that he's not the victim.
Right.
And he desperately needs to be clinging to the idea that he is the victim of the piece. However, I am willing to believe, because Scott and David's arguments were good, that he would cause a situation, even had the nun not come up and scared her off, where they would have gotten into a physical struggle, and she would have accidentally, you can't see my air quotes, fallen out the window.
Right.
But it would have had to have been a very contrived situation where he could still believe himself the victim, even though he very clearly isn't.
Yep.
That's about as far as I
No, I follow you, and I agree. Yeah, Scott and David make very strong arguments, and you're right. Yeah, I can definitely see him putting in that situation where most likely the accident happens and she dies, which then makes you wonder what all happens to Ferguson, because let's see, in the span of a year and a half, 3 people have died around him from falling off balconies accidentally.
Mm-hmm.
I'm starting to think he's put on a watch list somewhere.
Yeah. It's like, I mean, you know what he's thinking when he's looking down. He's thinking, "Oh man, this is going to be one rough inquest."
Maybe the next institution he was put in will be what an actual institution looked like at that time period.
Exactly.
No,
What, they didn't look like another apartment?
Mhm.
What?
I swear,
know.
it looked like a boutique, didn't it?
Did no one see the noose that was hanging in that apartment that that he went and visited, where she disappeared from?
No, there was a noose.
Yeah, there was a noose hanging down from the ceiling as he was going up the stairs.
Huh.
That was at that one hotel that
Yeah.
that Carlotta was at, right?
Yeah.
Supposed to be Carlotta's
Right.
home, or they owned it.
Correct. Right before they went into the room that she showed him, there was a noose hanging down the stair, down the central of the staircase. And I was thinking,
that a lot of that suicide imagery was intentional to make Scotty believe that she was suicidal.
Yeah.
And really promote that white knight impulse in him.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's just showing Alfred's craft through these films.
Did everyone see Alfred throughout the whole thing?
Oh yeah, yep. he does enter stage left, exit stage right. Very brief moment. So I did catch Alfred this time.
Mhm.
He was tougher to see in The Man Who Knew Too Much, in the 56 version. But he was in there too. But yeah, I definitely saw him in this one. So there is an Alfred sighting as well in this film. So there you go. Completes Vertigo. And that completes our discussion for tonight. I know we went a little bit long, but this film, man, it's like you wonder why we're doing 8 weeks of Hitchcock. We could do a year of Hitchcock. I mean, there's so many different things he does in his films, and this one is really one that I think it's one of not just Jimmy Stewart's darkest films, his darkest film. I mean, yeah, we have Psycho in that, but this really, especially looking at it from quote unquote modern eyes, this film is disturbing as hell.
It touches people because people want to believe that they're always doing the best they can do, even when they're not. And that's why this movie really touches people.
This is the first movie that I saw of Alfred Hitchcock that actually emitted some kind of an emotion from me, because of the fact that it deals with suicide. And I always remembered the two women, the doppelgangers.
Yeah. Scotty D, any final thought with the Vertigo?
Just that maybe Scotty should go to live in a ranch. That's about it. Yes.
Live on a one-level ranch.
Out
and away from everybody.
Don't and maybe he should be put on a list. Honestly, also.
Wow, I just went to a dark place for Vertigo Return. Return to Vertigo. His character, Alfred Hitchcock, comes back from the grave to direct this. Hold on, here we go.
Oh boy.
John
Oh, dear.
Scotty Ferguson is so obsessed. He starts dressing like Madeline Elster, but he doesn't
dear
realize
Lord.
he's dressing like Madison Elster. So he is becoming obsessed with himself.
Oh, wait, isn't that Psycho?
Yeah, right? You
That's
saw
the
where it's
next
going.
movie. That's
You
the
saw-
next movie he did after
You-
this because, and it was seen as like, boy, does Hitchcock still have it because Vertigo was a bomb when it came out. It did not do
Really?
well, and it was even it was not well. It was not received well. Actually, I take it back. It wasn't his next movie. North by Northwest was,
Right.
and that actually was a hit. But
Mhm.
Vertigo was not a big hit. It did not do well, and it did not get great reviews. It got kind of fair to middling reviews. They said, "Oh, here we go again." And there's this idea that maybe Hitchcock might be old hat. You know, he was being criticized like these new people are on the block and they're doing so much better and more interesting stuff. There was a French film called Diabolique that was getting a lot of play, and that's why. And one of the reasons they did Vertigo is because it was based on a book by the writers of Diabolique.
Oh.
And then Vertigo didn't do well, and so he went to North by Northwest, which I think is his most crowd-pleasing movie. And it's a great movie. But Psycho, he was kind of seen as like, geez, is he all washed up? Is he just going to be doing TV now? And that's when he totally rewrote the rules of how movies are made.
He's like,
again.
screw you guys. We're gonna.
And everybody was like, Diabahoo?
Nice. Well, I thank my panel for going a little extra long tonight, but as you can tell, folks, there's still a lot you could dissect with this film. It's just amazing. And again, I know we're looking at it, here we are, 60 years later looking at it, but at the same time, it's even more of an interesting film, I think, looking at through more modern eyes than maybe, back then, because it covered a lot of subjects no one talked about. And now that we mentioned it, yeah, you know what? I could see Ferguson turning into old Norman Bates. So there's an alternate Psycho for you. Yeah, Alfred's signature stuff in here. Check it out if you haven't already, folks. You got to see it to see what a film like this. And then you're going to go, wait, this was made in 1958? You're kidding me. Because it's a standout film. And it's much appreciated. And I know I'll be revisiting it soon too. So this is now the part where I give my crew members the license to shill, and they can tell you where they're at when they're not here. So Dawn?
Sometimes you can find me in theaudience.net.
Fantastic. Some great written reviews there. Check it out. David?
You can find me on Inside Movies Galore on YouTube and Facebook.
Awesome. And Scotty D, I know it's not been updated for a while, but I still want you to plug it because there's such great stuff. So go
thank
for
you.
it.
Yeah, if I ever get my peepers working again, there'll be more. But you can catch a lot of my old writings at a site called movieocrity.com. And then you can catch my old web series, Movieocrity. Probably the best place to catch that is at Vimeo, because we stay away from the YouTube prudes.
Yes.
So that's at vimeo.com/channels/Movieocrity.
Awesome. And I would also like to just give a shout out to all the fun people out there who are taking time to listen to us on Spotify. We are out there and people are listening. And I so much appreciate that. You visiting our little sliver of the podcast world. Thank you so much to my crew members, and I hope you're enjoying these 8 weeks of Hitchcock. We mentioned it. We will be talking about it. Yes, the next film up will be North by Northwest. So stay tuned for that, folks. And let's just say good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening. Good evening. Hey, all my friends out there looking for more spoiler room goodness, then why don't you check out our brand new Patreon page, patreon.com/specialmarkproductions, where you can get access to exclusive spoiler room episodes and a whole lot more. You can also find us on Facebook groups at SMPRD and on to Twitter at SpecialMarkPro. Let your voice be heard and let us know what you would like to see in the spoiler room, as well as just how we're doing in general. We appreciate your support, and remember, in the spoiler room, the conversation is fresh, but we do spoil the movies.